Hi everyone, Dan here. Today I'll be talking to you a little more about periodization. I'll be introducing to you the different methods on how you can create a periodization plan. Do take notes that the examples that I give will be based on strength training, as I do not have the expertise to provide examples on specific sports training. I hope this will help you to further understand the concept of periodization and help you to better plan a training program for your athletes. All right, let's get started. There are various ways we can plan a periodization program. Firstly, the block method. In this method, we focus on one particular component during each mesocycle. For example, I have an 8-week mesocycle for training the maximum strength. After that, I'll have another 8-week mesocycle for training the muscular power. This method is usually used when there is a low number of competition during the macro cycle. Secondly, the conjugate method. Instead of training one component at a time, I mix it up and train multiple components during each mesocycle. For example, during the final mesocycle, I have 3 strength training days a week, and I plan to work on power on Monday, strength on Wednesday, and strength endurance on Friday. This method is usually used when competition frequency is high during the macro cycle. Next, whether you use the block or conjugate method, you can choose to plan the program in a linear or undulating method. For linear progression, the intensity and volume increase gradually over the weeks. And this method is suitable for less experienced athletes. For undulating, intensity and volume of training can differ significantly between sessions and can increase or decrease daily or weekly, and it's more suitable for the experienced athletes. Let's take a look at block periodization first. Block periodization can be used when there is no frequent competition. Like this periodization plan, there is only one competition taking place within a 5-month period. So there's time to focus on one component at a time. In this case, I decided to have 4 weeks to train the foundation strength and 8 weeks each to train the maximum strength and the maximum power. Here's an example of a block linear plan for maximum strength. Throughout the 8 weeks, the athletes will only be performing exercises for muscular strength adaptation, and the intensity of the training is increased gradually by the week. Intensity is reflected by this percent magnitude beside each week over here. If you remember from my previous video on periodization, I mentioned about an unloading week every 4 to 6 weeks. In here, I plan to unload by reducing the number of sets every 4 weeks. This is to help facilitate recovery from the residual fatigue, so that athletes will be able to perform better on the subsequent 4 weeks. This is an example of a block undulating method. Over here, I'm focusing on the maximum power. So you can see that for both session and throughout the 8 weeks, I'm focusing on the lower limb muscular power of the athletes, but the intensity differs every week and on each session, right? And the progression is not as gradual as linear method. So linear method, you can see that the progression is quite gradual, but for undulating method, it fluctuates quite a lot. So for example, week 1, on the first session, I'm only using body weight. And then week 2, I'm using 110% of body weight. And week 3, I jump back to body weight. And then week 4, I go to 105% of body weight. So that's how undulating periodization works, right? Next, we shall look at conjugate periodization. Over here, there are more frequent competitions, so we'll need the athletes to be able to have mini peaks more frequently. We can still place more focus on specific component while working on other components concurrently. So I still have blocks for foundation, blocks to one block to focus on maximum strength and one block to focus on maximum power. But I'll train all different components concurrently. Let's take a look at conjugate linear first. Again, we use an example that focus on maximum strength down here. So this time round, I plan a 3 sessions per week program so that it'll be easier to understand the concept. I'm supposed to focus on maximum strength for this mesocycle. So I plan for 2 sessions to work on maximum strength and 1 session to work on power. So you can see that session 1 and session 3 are focused on maximum strength, and then session 2 is to focus on maximum power. As it's a linear method, the intensity progresses gradually every week. Just to make it clear, increment doesn't necessarily has to occur weekly. It can be fortnightly depending on how fast individual athlete progresses. Now we shall take a look at conjugate undulating method. So this time round, my focus is on power, but I still want the athlete to continue working a bit on their maximum strength. So I plan for 2 sessions of power and 1 session of maximum strength. And because it's undulating, the intensity does not increase gradually over the weeks, right? So you can see again, session 1 and session 3 are for maximum power, and then session 2 is for maximum strength. And you take a look at session 2. The week 1, I'm getting them to lift at about 80% of their maximum for the main exercises, first 2 exercises, and then on week 2, I'm getting them to lift 75%. Week 3, I jump to 85%. Week 4, I go back to 80%, and so on. So unlike linear, whereby each week, pretty much every week, I'll be increasing gradually, or I'll increase gradually every 2 weeks, depending on individual athletes' progression, rate of progression. All right. So for conjugate method, I can plan it in a way whereby I have different components within a week, which is like this one, whereby I have um, 3 sessions and then I work on 2 different components on each session. What I can also do is to have different components within each session. So take a look at session 1. First 2 exercises are focused on power, and then the next 2 exercises are focused on strength. Same for session 2. First 2 exercises are focused on power, and the next 2 exercises are focused on strength. So for conjugate method, you can do it this way as well. And some coaches will plan different exercises for every week. So this is quite common for weightlifting athletes. So this is an example of a weightlifter's training program. You can take a look at the first table. That represents the first session of each week. So on week, you can take a look at each week. The exercises are quite different. Same for the second table. That represents the session 2 for each week. Again, every week, the exercises are somewhat different. All right. So it's very common for the weightlifters to plan their program this way. So today's presentation is pretty short. It's basically to introduce to you the block method, conjugate method, linear method, and the undulating method of periodization. I hope that this video has helped you to understand these concepts better. If you have any questions, feel free to message me from my Twitter account. All right. Thank you for watching.